Morning, Cameron on the Busy Gardener channel. And this morning, late fall morning, late October morning, we're gonna look at how to prune blackberries, and it's gonna extend to other cane fruit. Let's get busy. When it comes to blackberries and these other type of cane fruit, sometimes you wonder, how am I supposed to prune this stuff? If you know, and if you've been around these type of fruit, like in-laws are up in the Pacific Northwest, and so going up there, it's crazy to see how blackberries just run wild over there. They're actually an invasive species. In fact, my father-in-law is always surprised to see that I'm trying to grow blackberries. Usually they're trying to get rid of them. Anyway, and part of the reason for that is because they can get really unwieldy. They can grow all over the place, and so we're gonna look at a few things. We're gonna talk about the boysenberries that I've got, as well as the blackberries, the triple crown blackberry that I've got, which is a nice thornless variety, semi-erect, which is gonna give us a blend of both worlds. There are some varieties, cultivars that are fully erect, some that are super just trailing and just go along the ground like brambles, and some that are in between, like these triple crowns. So in this video, as we look at pruning blackberries, boysenberries, and other cane fruit, some key things to remember. One, you want to prune out, if they're floricanes, you're going to prune out all of last year's growth. So everything that you have up on the trellis, you get rid of. Second thing, when you cut it off, you want to cut it off at the ground. The canes that you're removing, you want to remove those at the ground. So that way you're not allowing disease to be introduced through kind of a rotting part of the cane. Third, you want to, when you're choosing what canes to leave so that you're going to trellis for the next time, you're going to leave those that are more established, the thicker ones, and you're going to leave maybe 2 to 3 per plant that you're going to then train up. And you want to look at the cane thickness. There's some that are the thickness of a pencil and some that are the thickness of a, not quite a garden rake handle. Like they're 1 inch across versus 1/4 of an inch across. So you want to keep the thicker ones. That's going to support more fruiting. It's getting kind of a nice highway for nutrients, and that's going to translate into better fruit production, better growth, more vigor. So this rooting that it wants to do, this spreading and rooting that it wants to do to kind of self-propagate itself, is a real reason to keep these things pruned and under control. It's hard to get in here when there are all these things going every which way. I thought, oh, I'll get to it, but it is gonna be quite a chore. These blackberries, it's crazy. First of all, I have these just trained up on the trellis, but look at all of this growth that's coming all down here. Look at them trying to make their way. In fact, it's so funny, this this right here is a boysenberry, which is supposed to be about 15 feet over there, and it's even making its way over here. So yeah, if you notice how these are just wanting to kind of find purchase wherever they can. And it's interesting, as they go out, you'll notice that they go and put their tips in the ground. There's an end. I'm going to try to see if there's an end here. They're all kind of tied up. Oh yeah, oh my goodness, look at this. This is some rooting action right here. This is the regular stem, and actually this is an easy way to propagate these blackberries or any of this type of cane fruit, is to actually bury a tip of the end in the ground. And look at this. This was just, this was in the ground, the end touches the ground, and then it turns into this. We're gonna see one that's fully in the ground here. Let's see. Watch this, when we pull it up, it's gonna, look at that. And so if you're wanting to grow plants, and maybe I'll do some video on that sometime. If you're wanting to grow plants, you'd leave that end in the ground, and you maybe come back here, and once it's established, then you cut over here. And that way you've got this little plant start, and then you can eventually dig that up and put that in something else. Or you could dig it up right that minute. But the idea is that these things really make their way, and you'll notice that all over here. I'm gonna be going through the, ow, that's a boysenberry. I'm expecting thornless, and it ends up being thorny. But here's another great example. Look, I had to dig this one out of the ground a couple of times. Anyway, what I'm going to start with when it comes to pruning is I'm going to go and I'm going to take off all of last year's growth along the trellis. That way we're going to know exactly what we're working with on the ground, and we'll be able to choose some canes that we think are going to do pretty well for us. So first step is take off those all the existing growth. Step was getting rid of all of this shade fabric, the shade cloth. This did a really good job of keeping the berries nice and cool. I saw hardly any burned berries, even though we had a couple of days of like 115 degrees, the hottest I've ever seen it. But these did a great job when they were over the berries of keeping the plants cool, keeping those fruit from turning into those little dried crisps. I have a video about how to do some of this stuff, so maybe go check it out. So again, I'm gonna start with all of last year's growth that is up on the trellis. I'm gonna get that out of the way so I can see then what we're working with and what we're gonna train up onto the trellis for this year's fruit. It's really astounding how this stuff grows. Look at this. This was like one single cane that came up last season, trained it over, and look at all this growth that came off of just that one single cane. So when you're down here in just the trenches and you're looking and you're trying to figure out exactly which ones, what am I supposed to choose? There's so much, and you're looking down here. You're gonna identify, we'll flip to the other camera. There's a really brown cane here versus the kind of bright green canes here, or even here. So as you're making your determination on what to cut, you wanna get all the way as close to the ground as you can, and you cut this off. And as you're looking at the canes that you're going to use for the next year. Now something to think about when you're pruning these is to grab it by the base and pull it this way, because the natural leaves it'll fold them all over like this, and it'll allow them all to come up. If you're pulling in this direction, everything wants to catch on these limbs. And so by pulling it from the base out, you're gonna avoid a lot of those snags. You'll also notice that I'm going kind of slowly. I'm walking really gingerly because I'm trying to avoid smashing any of the canes on the ground. In fact, what I might do is I might just take, as it's getting cleaned up, I might take and put some of the canes to the side just so that way I'm not stepping on them as I'm walking around. I don't want to damage them. This is next year's fruit. Well, one other thing to consider, this doesn't really have to do with pruning so much as it has to do with what types of berries you choose. Most blackberries have thorns. However, there's some really amazing cultivars that have been developed that have nothing. Look how smooth this Triple Crown Blackberry is. There's no thorns. I can totally hold it. There's nothing on here. It's entirely smooth. These are like the fruiting buds and the leafing buds. Look at that compared to this crazy. Look how thorny this is. As you're trying to reach in, each of these is a little razor sharp little pinprick needle that just wants to, and it's all the way up. So it's not even just what you're grabbing with your hands, but also as you're moving your way through the shrub, you know, or rather if you're moving your way through the berries and you're grabbing them and you're hauling them around and you're getting scraped on your arm and on your back. That compared to the totally smooth, see them here next to each other, the totally smooth Triple Crown. And Triple Crown's a really productive variety too, and the berries are pretty good. I've got to endorse, if you're doing a backyard thing, or especially if you've got kids or just don't want the hassle of all these thorns, I really recommend getting a thornless cultivar of blackberry. Are you doing a video to help other people too? Yeah? You shooting it? Hey bud, do you think these videos help other people when they look online? Yeah, they sure help me out a lot. We're going to talk a little bit about what kind of canes to choose. You want, for each of these things, you want maybe a couple of canes, 2, maybe 3 canes coming up out of the ground. And you're going to want to look for the thickest ones, the thickest and longest and healthiest ones. As you're looking at the canes you're going to use for the next year, you want to see, this is what I'm talking about, the vigorous sizes. Versus this small cane versus this larger cane, I would choose this larger cane if it had the length on it versus this smaller cane for what I'm going to trellis up for next year. Once you identify those, just drape them up on, if all of your groundwork is already done in terms of the used canes. All the fresh canes you see here that I've got to make my way through, What I'm gonna do is try to, at the base, identify which are the strongest. I'm gonna put those on the top, and that way it's gonna let me know everything else on the ground can go. So that way, even if I come through some sort of herbicide to get rid of some of the grass that's over there, all of the canes that I'm using, I'll cut the canes off first before I do the grass. All of the canes that I'm not gonna use this year. And then I'll go through and take care of that. Another thing to consider is that I didn't even think about saying this. There are a couple of different kinds of cultivars of berry plants. There are primocane and floricane. In short, primocane varieties, it means that anything that grows up that season is going to give you fruit. So if you've got a cane that comes up that season, that primocane cultivar is going to give you fruit. Floricanes, on the other hand, which is what these are, these triple crowns and the boysenberries. Floricanes grow for one season, and then that wood fruits the second season. So the way we do this is we have the stuff that we're gonna train up this year, we're gonna leave on here, and next season it's going to give us fruit, while the new stuff that's growing out on the ground is gonna give it 2 years from now. You know, there's some, kind of really depends on what you're wanting to grow and whether or not it's a floricane or primocane. Primocane cultivars can be kind of cool because you can go through and just mow everything down. You don't have to be so selective like I'm being right now. Just come through. If you see any part of the plant, you just cut it down to the ground, and the next year it comes up. I've heard of people even having a lawnmower and just mowing down their row of blackberries each season, and then coming back and doing that year after year. It really boils down to what you're looking for. Turned out the triple crown, thornless, good fruit set. Sometimes those floricanes can be a little bit more productive, so that's a consideration too. Something else to consider is the eventual length of these. Once you have them up on the trellis and you've got them draped over, you're going to want to top it probably around, once you have it wrapped around your trellis, maybe around 6, 7, 8 feet in total length of the cane. And another consideration are these side shoots. So you see that each one of these has these side shoots coming off. Now, as far as pruning from the ground and doing cleanup, this makes it much easier. But you want to terminate those at about 2 feet long, 18 inches to 24 inches from the main stem is where you're going to want to cut end these laterals, and that's going to create some additional lateral growth from there. I want these small leads I don't want that long one to continue going. What I want is for each of these now to spring off these side shoots. That'll hopefully give some really good fruit production for the next season. One final thing to do is you want everything under about 1.5 feet or so to just be cut off. All these little side guys, I don't want any fruit at the ground. All that's doing is encouraging the little critters to come and munch on them. That's something that you're gonna wanna continually upkeep. Maybe that one's about as high up as about as low as I want the fruit to go. Because we want the fruit to all be, first of all, where we can reach it, and second, where it's not coming in contact with the ground and turning into a big tangled mess down there. So I've got this pile of canes, and that's only what I took off the trellis, never mind all the stuff that I'm gonna have to get off the ground, pulling those roots out of stuff that are little feeders, little runners that want to turn into new plants everywhere else. The reason this channel even exists is to get rid of some of the mystery around fruit trees and other gardening type stuff. It's scary when you don't grow up in this kind of environment and wonder, okay, if I cut that or if I move this or if I shape that, what's gonna happen? And so hopefully this has removed some of that mystery for you. Hopefully it's demystified it and giving you some confidence to be able to go out and do something. Again, there's not a ton you're gonna do to damage your fruit or your trees. You might sacrifice fruits that one year, but that's okay, there'll be fruit the next year. So if there's anything that you are interested, as you've seen up here, well, put it in the comments below. Maybe we'll do a video of it, maybe you can answer it. I'd love for you to like and subscribe this video, share it. I'm gonna have some links to some of the tools and that I've found really helpful up in my orchard. It's gonna be in the description. So appreciate you tuning in, taking the time. Until next time, stay busy. We have a windmill. What's it doing on the ground? Ah! Santa Ana winds were kind of tipped over and onto the crazy berry trellis. So I came and just laid it down. So while all the really, really heavy winds subsided, that's gonna hopefully keep it safe. We're gonna ride it. Let's get it up. Let's see what's going on here.